As we saw in the last section, the REST operator is used in function arguments whenever we want to capture a list of variables or a list of arguments. Very closely related to the REST operator is another operator called the spread operator. While the REST operator is used to kind of gather together variables, the spread operator is used to kind of flatten or spread them out. So let's look at an example of this, and then we're going to go to the next section and talk about where we use each of these. So very practical examples of the use of both of them. So let's imagine for a moment that we are building an application where we need to display a palette of colors to our users. So perhaps this palette will have some default colors, and maybe it'll also have a list of colors that the user has entered themselves. So let's make two lists here of some default colors, which will be maybe red and green, and then maybe user favorite colors. So ones that the user has entered in as their favorites. And maybe our favorites are orange and yellow. Now to generate a color palette, we need to join all of these entries in a single array. So the purpose of this application is I want to show basically a list of colors to the user. So we want to join all of our default colors and our user favorites into an array. Now you might be thinking to yourself, hey, that's no problem whatsoever. We can just use the concat method. So the concat method is a method that exists on every single array that we ever create. We can pass in another array, and the two arrays will get joined together into a single one. So we've got red and green, that gets joined together with orange and yellow, and we end up with red, green, orange, yellow. Not too bad right now. This definitely makes sense. So we can do this, but we can also use the spread operator to achieve the exact same effect. So let's refactor this to use the spread operator instead, and we'll talk about why we might do this. So I'm going to remove this existing concat line, and instead I'm going to create a new array, and then inside of it I'm going to do ... default colors and ... user favorite colors. And as you can see, the end result is exactly the same. We've got red, green, orange, and yellow. So what the heck is going on here? So let's talk about exactly what's happening. With this operator, this spread operator, we first created a new array. And so that's what we see on the outside here. This is that new array. We just generated a completely new one. Then inside of it, we referenced an existing array, and in front of it put ... So this is what we refer to this as the ... as the spread operator. So I want to take all of the elements inside of default colors and kind of pull them out into and flatten them out into this outer array out here. And then the same process is repeated for user favorite colors. So note that if I remove the ... I end up with an outer array and an inner array as well around the user favorite colors. So what user favorite, or what the ... here, or the spread operator is doing, is it's just kind of negating or flattening out this inner array here. So it's dumping everything inside of it into the array outside. So why might we do this? What is the purpose of this spread operator? Well, it definitely is, the end product is nearly identical, or I really should say identical to using the concat helper. The reason that I might take this approach right here is that it more easily allows us to see exactly what's going on with this line of code. I can see that we are very clearly creating a new array, that we take all the values out of default colors, all the values out of user favorite colors, and we're joining them together into one. So maybe you're thinking to yourself, Steve, I don't buy that. Like concat was already super clear. I knew exactly what was going on. And so okay, that I'll buy that. That makes sense. So let's look at another benefit of using this syntax here. What if we also have another array called something like fall colors, and this had, I don't know, fire red and fall orange. So now I want to make sure that I include this array into my color palette as well. To do so, I can just add in another ... fall colors, and now I end up with fire red, fall orange, red, green, orange, yellow. And so as I add in more records, I can just do ... with the new array, and they get joined in. So even with this, you might still be thinking to yourself, I still don't buy this. Concat still works just fine. Why would we use it? So let me give you one last example here, one last improvement with this type of approach. With this approach right here, What if at the time that I join these colors together, I want to add one more element on top of everything else, right? So I want to add just one more color in here on top of all these other sources of colors as well. I can do so by just saying blue. So with this approach, by using the spread operator to concat arrays together, to join them together, I can add in new elements at the same time that I join in other arrays like so. And so this is one of the best use cases of the spread operator. Whenever I want to take some existing list of items or create a new list and then add in some other array on top of it. So at the time that I join all this stuff together, I could say green, blue, and then, oh yeah, everything inside of fall colors and everything inside of default colors and so on. Whew, all right, so a lot of, hopefully I've convinced you at least somewhat that using the spread operator is pretty effective here. We can also mix and match the spread and rest operators inside of one example. So let's look at one more example and then go on to the next section. So let's say that I want to make a shopping list. You validate shopping list. And the purpose of this is to make sure that maybe when I go and buy my list of items from the grocery store, I want to make sure that I always am picking up milk. Okay, so let's say validate shopping list. And I'll pass in oranges and bread, and I'm not buying list with this, I'm not buying milk with this list of groceries right here. So I want to add some validation logic in here to say, hey, you know what? If you didn't get milk, you need to get milk. Make sure you get that, okay? So to handle this, notice how I'm passing in individual arguments here, and I could have as many as I could possibly think of. So maybe I also have eggs. So as a possible use case or a possible way of implementing this function is I can say ... items. So capture all the items on my shopping list right now. And if items.index of milk is less than 0, so in other words, if milk is not on my shopping list right now, then I'm going to return milk with the rest of my items. Otherwise, maybe I already have milk on there, I'll just return items instead. And so now the result is, even though I thought I was only going to shop for oranges, bread, and eggs, I also get appended on there, or prepended I should say, milk as well as all the other shopping items that I have. So we can freely mix and match these rest and spread operators in a single function if we so chose. Okay, so we've looked at a couple different iterations of both these operators. Let's continue in the next section and look at a little bit more practical example.